Simmons Bank Arena. It's getting quiet in here. We've got some media folks doing some live TV stuff, radio stuff, and here I am getting on the YouTube live. I'm hoping you'll join me. It's a little later than I wanted to go today, but we had post-game press conferences, with a couple of players, Jordan Walsh and Anthony Black. Jordan Walsh scores a career-high 18 points. It's back-to-back double-figure scoring games for Walsh. When you go back to Oklahoma, Arkansas's 10-point win, then Arkansas wins by 19 points today, and Walsh has 18. He was a perfect 7 of 7 from the field. That included 1 of 1 from the free throw line, 3 of 4 at the foul line. 1 of 1 from 3, 3 of 4 at the foul line. And he fouled out. Had 5 fouls. There were some multiple flagrant fouls and other stuff going on in this game. It got kind of wild. But with about 7 minutes left, so he did all his damage with, up until the 7-minute mark. Arkansas was well ahead at that point. Arkansas enjoyed double-digit leads in both halves. Walsh was part of a big 11-0 run early that really put Arkansas out to that first double-digit lead. He had a steal. Devo Davis had a steal, and then Walsh finished off both of those plays in transition with dunks. 11-0 run, Arkansas goes up by double figures, and really, Arkansas led by 12 at halftime. Blew that up early in the second half to a 22-point game when Devo Davis scored back-to-back baskets. A pull-up jumper, which is vintage Devo, then a corner three, Arkansas goes up 22. A Jalen Grand dunk a few minutes later, Arkansas has its biggest lead at the time, 24 points, 60-36, and this was over. This is really a game about hustle plays again. That was the formula against OU, and it just mushroom cloud today. It was a flood of turnovers. That's what I wrote in my game story. Arkansas forced 27 turnovers today, committed only 11, so plus 16 there. Arkansas had a plus 28 advantage in points off turnovers, 37-9. That is where the game was won. When you start looking at 16 steals created by Arkansas as part of those turnovers, Bradley had 8 steals in this game. They came in averaging 8.5, but that didn't keep Bradley in the game. Bradley was never really in this game, and it goes back to the hustle plays again. Steals, block shots, getting out in transition. Arkansas was plus 10 on the fast break, 17-7. Dominant in the paint. I think it was a plus 24, 26 advantage, 40-16 maybe. So you start to see now where Arkansas playing to its strengths, only 11 3-point field goal attempts today. That was huge for Arkansas to stick to what's in the wheelhouse, get to the basket. We talked about Jordan Walsh. He did knock down a 3 in one of those early first half runs. I mean, he had a career high at halftime, 16 points. He already had his career high by halftime. But other guys, Anthony Black, Ricky Council, getting downhill, attacking the basket. Arkansas's bigs, we saw all of them today. Mekhi Mitchell, Jalen Graham doing some good work. Kamani Johnson doing some good work. Mikel Mitchell doing work. So you saw all of Arkansas's bigs getting in the mix and part of this dominant performance at both ends of the floor, really. Arkansas, again, shoots 49% overall from the field. That's its season percentage, top 25 in the country. As good as Bradley was defensively, keeping teams down in the 30s. Field goal wise, keeping teams down in the 50s, scoring wise, 59 points a game. Arkansas once again obliterates those kind of numbers with a performance like this. And I go back to the defense, that blue collar stuff, getting up and down the court after forcing those turnovers. Devo Davis, we mentioned him, 7 points, 7 big rebounds, and then 5 steals. We talked about scoring, outside of Walsh. Ricky Council with 16 points. He's the SEC's leading scorer coming into today. Anthony Black with 15. He did other stuff as always, 4 assists, a couple of steals, a couple of blocks from that guard spot, a big guard. But this is, again, the way that Arkansas wanted to finish this stretch. After going 0-2 against OU in a mid-major hostile last year and getting beat by a combined 30 points, Arkansas completely flips the script. Beats OU by double digits, 10 points, wins by 19 today, going away really. It could have been worse. But that's a combined 29 margin after being minus 30 margin in these 2 games last year. Obviously, this wasn't Hofstra, but this was a good Bradley team from a good mid-major conference in Missouri Valley. So this is a huge win for Arkansas, in my opinion, because you took care of business. I said in my story they got their street cred back in Little Rock after what happened last year. And, now the program's 13-10 in this venue. This has not been a great place for winning for Razorback basketball over the years. I mean, they have a winning record, but you expect better than that playing in state in front of such a crowd. By the way, the crowd was great today. 16,675 is what it was announced at. We were told that was the second largest crowd attendance ever for a basketball game in this venue, going back to 2001 when Arkansas played Oklahoma State. So the fans showed up and they, especially I thought in the first half were louder. Arkansas had a comfortable lead most of this game. They got rowdy calling the Hogs. The opposing team had to call timeout several times. And I thought the crowd got into it at those points in the game. This was never close enough for the crowd to blow the roof off, though, with a run. Okay, let's read some of these comments. I'm going to go to the glasses here. Incredible. Hit the like for Kevin. Yeah, hit the like. Hit me with some comments. Let's get some comments going. I've got a background of Simmons Bank Arena here in North Little Rock. This is my community, by the way, Little Rock. I live in Little Rock. I grew up in Little Rock. Love all parts of the state, but it's always cool to get to cover the Hogs in my hometown. It's easy. It's an easy trip. Typically in night games in Fayetteville, when I'm up there, I don't get home till 2 or 3 in the morning. This will be an easy night. I'm having a lot of fun being here with you. By the way, go to hogville.net for all of our content. I know Dudley Dawson's going to do his usual he'll do a story on the opposing team's reaction in concert with my game story. I've already got part of that done. I'm going to add a lot more to it. And then I did a little double duty today for the Associated Press, and I've already gotten that story out. So, it just took a little bit longer than I would have liked. I'm glad for any of you that can join me and jump in here with me today. It's a lot of fun. I want to go through a lot. Nick Smith Jr. didn't have his best shooting game. There was talk of him having an ankle injury. Who knows what that was all about? That came from a national guy earlier. I don't think that was a big deal. He obviously started, had to have his his knee retaped, I guess, in the locker room. And early second half, he came out and didn't return. Musselman addressed that in his post game and said that no concern here. They just felt like the way the game was going, it wasn't a need to have him out there. And he should be fine in Arkansas's next game, which, by the way, is at home on Wednesday at Bud Walton Arena. It's UNC Asheville as Arkansas wraps up the home portion of its non-conference schedule. Then they'll get into SEC play a week later on the road against LSU. Then it's another week wait for Arkansas to have its SEC home opener against Missouri. And, of course, they'll play Baylor, one more non-conference game. But that's going to be on the road in Waco in late January. So you're getting close to the end of non-conference play. Arkansas 10-1. This is where this program was 2 years ago. Okay, let's see. Really like everything about this team. Yeah, I mean, look how this team has responded without Trevor Brazile. You might have thought that things were going to be tangled up and tough without Trevin these last couple of games. And it hasn't been that way. Arkansas dominated against OU. Arkansas dominates again today, flipping the script from a year ago. And you probably didn't think it would be this easy. I sure didn't with these two games, especially historically coming into this building. Eric Musselman had a big smile on his face because it's been 2 tough outings for him coaching the Hogs. You go back 2 seasons ago. I guess it's 3 seasons ago now. His first campaign at Arkansas, late comeback against Valparaiso to win that game by 4 points. Arkansas could have lost and then losing by 8 to Hofstra. So let's get away from those negatives, but let's just remind everybody, winning like this doesn't typically happen here. It does sometimes, but not typically. And for Eric Musselman, this was, one that was a little more relaxing getting to the end of it as he was able to put everybody in and give everybody a chance to play, which you always, as a Razorback fan, want to see that. And I think Arkansas right now, again, going into the Asheville game, you get a chance to get to 11-1. That'll be the best start under Eric Musselman. If that happens, you expect that will happen. So that'll be his best start at Arkansas. We know how these teams finish under Eric Musselman. We know the SEC won't be easy. I think some of these teams, even LSU, was probably doing better than we thought they might be with a new coach and a lot of turnover on the roster. Arkansas's had a lot of turnover on the roster, but Musselman went out and got the #1 overall recruiting class, and they sure are starting to show up when you look at everybody. I want to get back to Jordan Walsh. When we did our pregame earlier, I spent more time talking about Jordan Walsh and what he did against Oklahoma and some of the comfort level I started to see. And I really thought that we saw that carry over today. Early in this game, obviously, if you weren't here, you didn't see it, but he starts getting deflections, start creating havoc on defense where those loose balls turn into turnovers or you're going the other way. Walsh had a big hand in that. And then his confidence level, he went 7 of 7 from the field today. 1 of 1 from 3. I mentioned that. If you go back to the OU game, 2 of 5 from 3. So now he's made 3 of his last 6, 50% from distance. Eric Musselman and his teammates have been talking for weeks about how he's going to be part of helping Arkansas be better from 3-point distance on shooting on offense. Only 4 of 11 today, but what's the key? Arkansas kept those attempts down and played to getting to the basket, which is always going to be a winner for the Razorbacks. Jordan Walsh seems to be finding his role with his team. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Again, 2 games in a row, 30 points, so 15 per game in the last 2. Very efficient. And then you look on the, on the glass, on the defensive part of it. it's not just about scoring with him. He's generating energy, creating energy, and generating opportunities with the hustle plays. And that's contagious. Kamani Johnson plays that way. We've seen Makai Mitchell become a more consistent player in both halves. Arkansas's got to have that on the front line. This is an elite backcourt. Today it wasn't Nick Smith Jr.'s day, and then you see Council and Anthony Black step up and combine for over 30 points. Okay, the backcourt's typically going to be fine. Devo Davis, a huge game. But the front court, you saw everybody get in and play. All those bigs got a chance. Graham did some good things in this game. Jordan Walsh in that 3-4 combo spot. Arkansas's got a lot of small ball now with Trevin out because there's typically one big, and he's your 3-4 combo playing that small ball 4. So anytime you start to see a guy put it together like Jordan Walsh has in concert with Makai Mitchell being consistent and some of these other guys coming in and stepping up in that front line, that's going to be big for Arkansas. Again, I go back to the backcourt is going to be solid for this team. I think consistently is going to be good. There may be an off night here or there, but typically at least two guys are going to step up. And with as good as those guys are, that's all you need from that backcourt on most nights. But on the front court, Arkansas is starting to answer those questions that would have come up or started to come up with Trevin Brazil out, and I think that's huge. I go back to the Oklahoma game one more time. I don't think I've seen an Arkansas team this season up until that game be as feisty, dive into the floor for the ball. Not saying Arkansas doesn't play hard and hustle, but it just seemed like they were determined to win those blue collar battles, those 50-50 loose ball situations. And that was what it was today. Except today they added more. There was like a viciousness defensively. Guys just digging at the ball, really being physical. Musman talked about he thought the team was physical. And I think it had to be against a team that keeps the score low, wants to play a low tempo, wants to be physical itself. And Arkansas says, no, we're the physical team today. We're going to be the more physical team. All right, join me. It's Hogvillenet YouTube Live. I hope you're joining in and asking, give me some comments, ask some questions. Give me your 2 cents. I know not many got to see the game unless you were here. I think there might have been a live stream on Facebook. I think I saw a link floating around out there somewhere. So hopefully you got to watch it. Go to Hogville.net for our written content, whether it's football, baseball, basketball. We've got you covered. Otis Kirk, Dudley Dawson, and myself. And those are the big three. We've got coverage for all the other sports as well. I know the women's basketball team is still undefeated, beat a ranked team today. So basketball's looking really good at the University of Arkansas when you look at both men and women. It's a big deal. And so being in Central Arkansas, this is one time a year, guys, one time a year that the fans get to, in this area and other areas where it's easier to get here, get to come out and be a part of this. And the energy level is always always high in here for that. And unlike last year where you lose a game, they get rewarded. And Arkansas really, again, kind of put its stamp on this game early. There wasn't much question there. And this was a good Bradley team. A lot of injuries for the team. It was all hands on deck. So everybody was back, I think, for Bradley today. But it didn't matter. Arkansas was superior defensively. Just the flood of turnovers. I think just immediately there was turnovers immediately, and Arkansas took advantage, and most of them were forced. Like I said, 16 steals among those 27 turnovers for Bradley. So Arkansas is being very proactive defensively, and I think Eric Melsman tipped his hat to that. And there's finals. You had a week between games. There's other distractions going on. You're playing away from home in a place that's not always easy for the program, and so Melsman acknowledged those things in saying that he thought his team played a really, really good game defensively. No doubt about it. And again, we can go back to some of the areas where Arkansas dominated. I think Arkansas has also gotten to a point now where it's getting back to the free throw line with regularity and winning those battles. A lot of weird fouls, flagrant fouls, and Bradley ended up living at the free throw line. It seemed like in the second half, Arkansas spent its share of time there, and I think that's I'm not sure what happened today. I think the refs got a little bit, they wanted to maintain control for whatever reason. I didn't think it was that chippy, but they felt like they needed to blow that whistle. But it didn't detract from the fact that Arkansas was in control of the game and it was never in doubt. I think Bradley led 7-6 early. Nick Smith Jr. hits a three, his only field goal after a timeout. That's when Arkansas with Walsh and Devo getting steals. Walsh finished in transition. Walsh later hits a three not long after that, and Arkansas was up double digits and really never looked back, just continued to grow the lead. Some other takeaways I think today, again, when I go back to the front line, I talked about it in the pregame earlier. I mentioned some names of guys that we might see. All right. concern about that can keep them from winning it all? Well, I mean, I think of Trevor Brazil. People wanted to call him a unicorn. Very good player, very versatile guy though, and he's the kind of guy that against certain matchups, I think, gives Arkansas an equalizer or maybe an advantage. We haven't seen some matchups yet. Oklahoma was a good team, not a great team, not particularly athletic and long on the front line. Same with Bradley. Arkansas's got some good frontline pieces. Nobody that does what Trevor Brazil did. So there is a concern as you get through the season against some of these SEC teams, against a Baylor, some of these other teams. But we'll see how it plays out. We know Eric Musselman figures out ways to patch up where there might be a weakness. And I think it always helps when a guy like Jordan Walsh, when you think of Trevor Brazil as being a 4-5, and sometimes on the court with another big, in fact, he often was. And now you're just going a little bit smaller, but Walsh has got that length. He's got plus athleticism. I don't know that he's fully as versatile as Brazil was, but he's certainly looking very versatile and good right now. And I think Arkansas, when they see Jordan Walsh performing like that in concert with some of those other bigs and their performances and roles, I think they feel better about moving forward without Brazil. And so certainly there are concerns. Obviously, when a team doesn't shoot well from three, you're not at full strength. You've got a difference maker who Eric Musselman has said might be a top five. He said he was a top five player in the SEC. I tend to agree with him. So there are going to be concerns there moving forward, but I think Arkansas's answered the bell pretty strongly in these last two games. I mean, you win by a combined 29. You win both games by double digits, and you dominate. Again, I'm going back to the hustle plays. That's the DNA of this team. If you're going to win points in the paint and you're going to get to the basket and you're going to impose your will athletically, lengthwise, size-wise, then you got to get down and dirty too. You got to go after those blue collar plays and win them. You can't just kind of halfway do that. And I think Arkansas was up and down a lot earlier in the year, despite winning some games. I thought they were maybe up and down. I thought, going back to Maui, I thought in that final game for the longest period of time that San Diego State took the fight to Arkansas, and Arkansas didn't respond very well for a long time and was fortunate to dig that game out. Kamani Johnson kind of showed the way. I think right now a bunch of guys are figuring that out, and I go back to Jordan Walsh. He has been so good defensively, so active, disruptive, good on the glass, good in transition. He's more comfortable in the half court. I think the game slowed down for him. So I think there's a lot of good for the Razorbacks right now. Moving forward at this stage of the season, we know the last 2 years there have been rough patches, mid to late December, early January, getting into SEC play. Right now the waters are pretty calm, and that's a big statement given the loss of Brazil again and the fact that you lived so long without Nick Smith. In fact, today, he didn't play the whole game, and Arkansas was just that good. But I think moving forward, it gets tougher after Asheville on Wednesday. Arkansas can't just show up. It needs to have another strong game, make sure it gets that win at home before opening up SEC play a week later. But it gets tougher once you get into SEC play, and that's where we're going to learn maybe what some of the concerns ought to be that we don't necessarily know about right now. And it may just be that guys are really coming together. With 11 newcomers, you thought maybe Arkansas would have a little bit more trouble than it's had in the last couple of games. So I think that's a big steps and big strides for this team. Like I said, getting ready to go into SEC play. All right, it's Hogvillenet YouTube Live. We enjoy this. Love the interaction. Love the comments. Love being on here with you to talk about the Razorbacks. It's always easier to do after they win a game. Certainly, Bradley came in here 7-3, now 7-4. Had already lost to an SEC team in Auburn by 22 points. So saw Nick go to the locker room. Is he okay? Art Muss says that he should be fine and be ready for the next game Wednesday against North Carolina, Asheville. He went back in and had his knee retaped. And so that's what Musselman talked about. He didn't go into greater detail after that, other than to say he should be fine and be ready. And Wednesday's a quick turnaround, midweek game at Bud Walton Arena, and he says Nick Smith should be available. No worries there. So he got the start today, finished with 5 points. It wasn't a good shooting day for Nick, but I think he was, I don't think he was fully himself, and Musselman and the staff had a discussion about that on the bench and decided because things were going so well not to risk anything, go ahead and bring him off the floor, which is what they did early in that second half. And I thought when you look at Devo Davis returning home to Central Arkansas and the game he had, just such a force defensively with those 5 steals. He seemed to be timing guys up, coming from the weak side, their blind side, taking the ball away. And then making good decisions in transition after that. He really set a tempo for Arkansas, transitioning from defense to offense. 7 points, he didn't overshoot the ball, and he hit the mid-range shot, and then he got a corner three. So he was feeling it a little bit today. Had a reverse layup. So he did his scoring damage really in the second half. But he did a lot of other things. Like I said, he rebounded the ball. He had those 5 steals, 7 rebounds. That's big. And I just thought when you look across it, you see why this, even though it was 11 newcomers, they were all highly regarded. And then when you're returning guys like Kamani and Devo are giving you performances like they've been given lately, other guys start to fall in line and follow the lead. And because they're really demonstrating how it's expected here at Arkansas and Eric Musselman. And so others can follow along. Again, I go back to Jordan Walsh. I think he's someone that's really responded, playing to his strengths, relaxing a little bit. And again, I go back to the 3-point shooting. He looks like a different player right now. He's not rushing. He's letting the game come to him and it's slowed down. And we haven't talked a whole lot